recording?
Welcome. Yeah, we are now.
Hi, I'm Dov.
And I'm Daniel. Welcome to Post-Exertional Mayonnaise, a podcast about living with ME and chronic illness, creativity, and making meaning. It's good to have you with us. We're celebrating today our 1 year anniversary, which is incredible because we didn't really think this was going to kind of... Well, it's not that I didn't think that it was going to develop, but it was... I think it's... Do you think it's exceeded our expectations? I don't know.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think when we started out, there was the question of how much would we have capacity to do. Mm-hmm. And then, you know, there are a lot of pieces. I think we started kind of by the seat of our pants a little bit. And, but you have systematically like reached out to people. Like, I feel like, I mean, you know, my participation in the podcast has been like very little compared to yours. And you have systematically kind of, worked to handle both the technology piece of it, which is a lot. It's a lot of work to both be doing the interviews. Okay. So you're organizing and scheduling the interviews and then doing the interviews and then, editing them and posting them. It's a shit ton of work. And, yeah, so I think that there was a lot of fear around spoons and, you know, just kind of all the scheduling pieces of it. Like, would you schedule interview with someone and then would they be well enough, you know, having two people with ME, both able to do, you know, so I think there's a lot of moving parts and we had a lot of, maybe concerns or fears that we wouldn't get it off the ground, but like, thanks to your incredible, like steady work and also like I hate the word inspiration.
I know,
like,
you know, on the last episode with somebody actually.
Yeah, I don't like the word inspiration, but it's still kind of sometimes a useful term in the sense that Dan has like consistently been taking note of people who are doing really cool creative work, people with ME, and reaching out to them, which, you know, that's a lot of work. And it also, I think it takes a lot of dedication and skill to just continually sort of take note of really cool stuff being done and reaching out to people. And also, I think some people have reached out to you, right? And, and then, you know, you have to kind of figure out, is it a good fit for the show? And if so, like, how do you frame, you know, like there's certain things where parts of someone's work might be a good fit for the show and other parts not so much. And then, you know, like, how do you sort of decide what the show holds and what's appropriate for the show and what's, you know, like not everybody who's doing creative work is doing creative work that's about ME and not everybody who's writing about ME is writing about ME or talking about ME in a way that sort of goes along with the kind of show we want to, or that we are doing. I don't know how to say that. Yeah. So it's a lot of work and yeah, so it's fucking amazing and fantastic that we've done. Okay. So we've been doing this podcast for a year. Dan has done, I think, including the grief series, which I highly recommend you check out. And I love the idea of series, and we're hopefully going to do more of those, and we'll talk about that in a bit. But I think Dan has done near 50 podcasts in the last.
It's getting on that, yeah. I counted them, and it looked like that. I think some of them maybe I'd included shorts and stuff, so it might be slightly less than 50. So we've not quite done one every week. But what's really funny is that I had no intention when I don't even know whether it was your idea or my idea to start a podcast. I don't know whether,
because we've been talking about it kind of we've been talking about it very sort of casually, like, wouldn't that be cool? Because we were having a lot of really interesting conversations. And then one day Dan's like, let's do it. And he did all this research and he just like started setting things up. And then, I did some research into sort of the best software, but then you have been like, I don't know how to use Riverside. You've been doing all the Riverside stuff because that's what we used. And there was a lot of different pieces to it. But one day Dan was just like, went from thinking about it to let's do it.
I don't know where that came from.
Yeah, and he
And
got it started within, I think, a week or two after that. We were moving.
yeah, and you, I was my vision for it, I suppose, was just literally you and me having like a chat every 2 or 3 weeks. That was, and it was going to be like an audio podcast, and it was going to, hopefully some people would listen and kind of appreciate our conversations. And that was kind of like that was the sort of as much as I was sort of seeing it really. And you were like, oh, we could interview people. And I was like, oh, I don't know about this. And then you were like, oh, we could put it on YouTube. And I was like, oh, this is a lot of work now. And so it was like, so initially it was just like, well, we could do this. And, and then for whatever reason, yeah, I just kind of like grabbed it. And I thought, oh, maybe we could, I could learn how to, do this. And,
Yeah, and then we were talking about sort of I think we were trying to find a sort of thematic frame, and that's when Dan came up with the idea of talking about creativity, which is brilliant because, it's not that we don't do other things as well, but it's a way to create a channel that's sort of really values and honors whatever work people have the capacity to do, which, I think for people with ME, it's often um
okay,
Hey,
should be record.
we just had a little technical glitch, so we were talking about how
Interviews and stuff.
when we first started doing the podcast, you thought it would just be like conversations, and then we decided to interview people, and then you came up with the idea of focusing on creative work, which I think is, even though there's a lot of other stuff I think we could do too that I would like to do. I love that focus on creative work because it's a way to honor and value whatever we're able to do. And I think that just honoring what we have capacities to show up for, and do, and like in the grief casts, just honoring like surviving with this illness, or I don't know, I don't want to make it sound like I as much as we were talking before about how I don't like the word inspiration, and I also don't like, and we've talked about this before, the idea of the illness warrior, and that somehow like if you can survive an illness that means you're, like I just mean that, just honoring our everyday life and what we're able to do. And I think it's a really lovely way to approach a podcast about ME, even though there's all sorts of other stuff we're covering too.
Yeah, yeah. I think what we're trying to do is, and obviously we kind of started, at the beginning of each episode, we sort of say, a podcast about living with ME and chronic illness, creativity and making meaning, and it's kind of rolls off my tongue now because I've got so used to saying it. But, and I don't know where I can't even remember. I think we were probably just emailing and sort of came up with that, but with the focus of creativity. But I think hopefully everything that we do sort of falls into one of those sort of categories.
Yeah.
Or one of each, or all of them, or whatever. But yeah, so we've done so many different sort of creative stuff, but also focusing on the sort of living, just generally living. But I think it's sort of staying within our remit is going to be quite important for us because we could well, no, I couldn't. I was going to say we could delve into sort of research and science, but I just don't think that's our
No.
that's our area really. Like
No.
my brain doesn't function in a way that it can process that stuff easily, so it would make it harder for me to then actually follow and have conversations with people, and we're not from sort of sciencey backgrounds. So, and like the other thing is there's so many other people out there doing stuff. I mean, like I've been dipping into the Unite to Fight conference, which has been an international conference this week on research, and some great stuff, like amazing. And I've only understood really bits of it, and I've only been able to process bits of it because it's quite, we're talking about a lot of detailed medical biological stuff here that it feels, some of it I've been like, okay, I get that. Other things, it's like I just hit a brick wall sometimes trying to process it, just because that's just not my thing anyway. I'm not necessarily interested in it, but also it's hard to kind of get your head around. And then this sort of that cognitive dysfunction is not helpful either, is it? So so we hopefully whatever we do sort of sits within that kind of like realm of and sometimes we've touched on things that have helped people. Like we're not trying not to give advice, but you know, if a certain thing's helped somebody and people kind of want to hear things that have helped people, don't they? So
Right.
it's been very clear that whenever that's cropped up, it's very much clear. So this is the person's individual views rather than those of
Right.
the podcast and stuff.
Yeah, and I think our interests lie more in sort of people's emotional and intellectual experience and their, relationships,
Mm,
daily life, creative work. Yeah, and again, we're like at some point in this podcast, we are going to sort of talk about our next season because we just finished a season. We wanted to kind of review that and then talk a little bit about what we have coming up. But yeah, I think as much
mm,
as the scientific stuff can be fascinating, it's not where our expertise lies. It's not where our interest lies, and we're much more interested in, I think, in um, how people go through their days.
mm,
And
yeah,
yeah, and I
and
yeah, I have so many I think in my ideal world, if I had the spoons, I would want to have a whole series of videos where me and Dan and a couple other people like talk about sort of specific kinds of things that like how we navigate specific kinds of things with ME.
mm,
That's definitely something I'm interested in. But yeah, I think there's for me, there's only so much I have the capacity to do, and it's frustrating. And it's also just life with ME. But so we wanted to. Dan, do you want to go into kind of talking a bit about this last year? And
yeah. I mean, I would say as well, like, I know you sort of said that I'd put loads into it, and I would say that, which I kind of feel like, yeah, I kind of I've done more than what I was expecting I might do when we set out, just purely on kind of like, oh, we need to promote this on social media now, so that's going to take a bit of time in that, and so there's kind of like you sort of realize actually if you want to do things well, you need to put this sort of time in, but at the same time, it's trying to manage that alongside my illness. So it looks like we've like being really consistent, but behind the scenes there's been lots of juggling around. So like we've like various different guests or whatever. Either the guests had to postpone or I've had to postpone. So sometimes we've like recorded 2 or 3 episodes in a week, and then we've had sort of like episodes as backup, and then actually I've like probably in April I just was really crashy for about three weeks, 3 and a bit weeks, and I literally was in bed most of the time, and didn't do anything with the podcast whatsoever. And I couldn't even. We had 2 episodes ready to go out, and I was just like I couldn't even upload them to YouTube, like, or to the podcasting site, or like just my brain wouldn't work to write a description like to go with the podcast, or write a title, and that's yeah. So it looks like maybe it's all kind of gone quite smoothly and stuff, but yeah, it's been mixed bag behind the scenes. But yeah, like I just want to say, like I don't think I could have done it without you as well. Uh, I wouldn't have had the sort of like oomph, maybe, to the motivation to think, oh, is this something I can do? Maybe not even the confidence, if I'm honest. Like, and I think a lot, like, we have emails, don't we, behind the scenes, and, oh, what about this? What do you think about that? Or we sort of talk by email an awful lot when we're able, and that's helped me because I've got ideas and then I bounce them off you, and so yeah, it's been, even though I've kind of, it looks like I've done a lot of stuff, you've been there behind the scenes and it's been such a help for me. So yeah, thanks for that as well. So I
yeah, I
wouldn't
mean,
even want to say, sorry, go on.
Oh, I think I have a lot of frustration and sometimes guilt that I can't do more, and that you're doing so much work. And I worry about you, and I worry, I think that's the other thing about like two people with ME doing a podcast
Yeah,
is sort of, I worry you're going to overdo it. And but it's life with ME. It's like, there's always the chance that something's going to kind of push us past our limits. And
yeah,
I think we've both, like, because you had ME as a kid, like, I think you have some built-in ways that you, even though, like, I've had ME now, I hit my 10-year anniversary, which is a topic we're going to talk about at some point.
So we'll get there.
Dan, yeah, it's like there's so much to chat about that we haven't got there yet, but we're gonna. But Dan, I think you just hit your 5-year anniversary, but you also had ME as a kid for many years. So,
Yeah, was it 6 years? I
was
think it
it
was.
6-year anniversary?
When did I
Wait,
get ill?
how
I
old you
lost
were?
track.
36 when it came back? Were you 36 or 37?
Yeah, yeah. So it was 2018. So that's 6 years ago, isn't it? So yeah, my January anniversary was 6 years. Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
So cumulatively, I think we've both had a lot of experience sort of trying to trying to manage symptoms, and also one thing I find is that it's really hard to, like, rest up enough for things. It's like this morning I really wanted to rest before the podcast, but I was kind of like, I was excited. I was excited, and so I wasn't able to just do my, like, the power resting I like to do beforehand. Like, it's hard to kind of, I think self-care with this illness is, it's a lot of work, and it's really complex, and it's not always easy to do as well as we want it to be. But I think we've both kind of, you know, um like, I think you've accomplished an incredible amount, and I think you've also, you have crashed out a few times, but mostly you've been relatively hanging in
Hmm.
there. Yeah.
What's been interesting is like my friend Paul, who he listens to most of the episodes or all of them, and then he's really encouraging, and he features on one of the audio ones on the grief series. So yeah, but there was one episode we put out recently, and he was like, "Oh, you look tired, or you were tired," and I was like, and that was just before that kind of 3 week crash that I had
Yeah.
when I recorded it, and I was like, "Oh yeah." So it's what's interesting is that other people with ME can kind of like tell, like
Yeah.
probably what I'm looking like if they're watching on, yeah, or just maybe even our voices, like how tired we are at any given time. So and it is hard because I have cancelled, and other guests have cancelled, and then we've rearranged and stuff, and then it's hard to know like how much do I push myself to record this, or how much do I
Right.
push myself generally, because then nothing would happen otherwise. Or I mean, like, I'm in a fortunate position that this is the only thing I'm doing apart from you know feed my, trying to make sure that my kids eat food and stuff like that in the evening, and try to keep the house tidy-ish, as much as I can. So yeah, I'm trying to get that balance right between looking after myself and making sure I don't push too hard, while also kind of having plans and ideas that are coming up, and I think in a way that like, yeah, I was ill for 5 years before we started doing the podcast, and I've got to say, like, I feel that this is like the first time I feel like I've been doing something that's had meaning, or like something that I've been able to focus on, and I was like making music and stuff, and that was giving me meaning. But this is in a roundabout way using like my social work skills again for the first time, and just being able to
Yeah.
talk to people and have conversations, and it feels like I'm just a bit addicted to sort of like having conversations with people, because
Yeah.
it's very self-serving. It's a selfish thing, because I get to experience having a conversation, because this life with Emmy is like lonely, isn't it? At times when you know even if you're in a family, and they're all out all day, most days, sort of thing, for whatever
Yeah.
reason, being busy at life, and yeah, it's not always easy. So and I'm aware it's even harder for like people that like live on their own and they've got ME or whatever.
Yeah.
It's really, really hard, and want to acknowledge that, and yeah. So for me, it was it's really about enjoying having conversations with people, and it is that kind of simple. But yeah, there's some planning goes into it, but I've enjoyed it, and I think it's given me something to focus on. But what's been good is that because sometimes I think, oh, could I do a small amount of paid work? But then I know that, like I said, for this, I don't feel the pressure with the podcast. Like, it feels like it's been like I've been able to kind of like manage it alongside my illness, where I can just not do anything for 3 weeks. Nobody would
Right.
feel most of our listeners are not going to sort of feel expectation or when's the
Yeah.
next podcast coming out. They'll just listen to it when it comes out, and I know that, and you guys all know that. So in that
Right.
sense, it's I'll do it and enjoy it while I can, trying to balance and pace myself with it. But it's been a really enjoyable experience for me. So yeah, it's I hope other people kind of like benefit from it as well. Other people have, and it's been so lovely to have like feedback. And I put on Twitter the other day, oh yeah, we've hit a year now and we've done it, and it's been lovely to kind of get the feedback and from different people sending messages, and I think a big thing for me is like having grown in confidence with this as well. Like I a big thing for me, and I think a big thing probably for like a lot of people growing up with ME, like having ME as a young person, and then having to like re-enter society. Like suddenly you've missed like 6 years of school, and then you
Yeah.
sort of like re-entering society, going to college, going off to uni. Like for me, and then maybe like it would be good to have a whole episode on this, but like I certainly kind of like throughout my working career, like really felt a lot of imposter syndrome about
Yeah.
my confidence in like my work and my ability, and am I doing this right, or what do people think, and like so yeah, I feel like I've grown confidence in being able to facilitate conversations. I think in on these subjects, and I don't always get it right, and sometimes I watch an episode back and think, oh, I shouldn't have said that, or I've worded that not right, or oh, I've just had like 30 seconds of going so, and that frustrates me because it's something that happens anyway when you're talking and having conversations with people, when you're processing, but when you've got that, you've got a slight bit, you've got the cognitive dysfunction as well, and you're just losing words, or like sometimes words will come to you and you think, no, I don't mean that at all. I didn't mean that
Yeah.
word. So yeah, it's been I don't know, which episodes have you kind of found, whether you've been in it or whether it's been somebody else,
Yeah.
which episodes have you kind of really enjoyed?
Well, first of all, I want to say that like you're a natural at podcasting. Like you're so
Thank you.
good at you're like such a good question asker and listener, and yeah, I think there's a sense of like deep thoughtfulness, and you also just have a really lovely voice, and I don't know if
Some
yeah,
people have
so
said that I've got an FM voice. I think, have I really? I don't know. Yeah. It's quite soft, isn't it? My Northumbrian voice is soft. It's the area that I come from. We have soft voices. So.
So yeah, I think, and I also think that it's really important to sort of, I mean, I know this sounds silly, and here's, I was, when I got ME, I was in the middle of a program for teaching. So,
Mm-hmm.
everyone's always talking about modeling behavior, but I think it's really important to sort of model, which is probably not the right word, but it's just the word that comes to my brain because of my context. But to model what it looks like to do something with ME and know you're not going to do it 100% perfectly all the time, and do the best you can and still create profoundly meaningful work. And this is not to say like I've not noticed you saying any wrong thing. I don't think ever come away from an episode feeling like you've done anything but a wonderful job, but I know how it feels to like
Yeah.
that we're more critical of our own work than we are, or of ourselves than we are of other people. So I will say that. And then as far as the episodes, like there are so many. I'll
Mm.
just name a few that just come to mind because I think I've enjoyed. They're all very interesting, but ones that have really kind of stood out to me, and maybe on a different day, different episodes would come to mind. I think the first one that comes to mind is the one with Judith Houdin, her kind of, and it's
Oh,
interesting because
Schoschbach, I think it is. Yeah, in Austria.
yeah, in Austria,
Yeah.
first of all, the work they're doing is fantastic. Her and her partner. Also, it
Mm.
was really neat to see her kind of answering your questions a little bit on different days. Like you really got to see how much work she was putting into doing the interview. You also got to see her kind of drawing a little, and it was really neat to just, I think when we're doing these podcasts, we're seeing each other at our absolute best. And, otherwise we wouldn't be able to be doing a podcast. And it was neat to kind of see her more on her own time and her own pacing. And it was a brilliant
Mm.
podcast, and it was really neat seeing her partners um, video where he kind of says fuck a lot. For it's a much. I mean, I'm not doing it
Y-
justice, but that
yeah,
video.
yeah, it was
Um,
special.
yeah, so that one comes to mind. Of course, the one with Vlad was very, Vlad is a very interesting, captivating person to be talking to. And it was interesting really hearing about his music. As I learned it was really neat to hear kind of his, it's devastating hearing sort of how hard it's been for him to not get to do the things he wants to do in life and not get to engage in music and academia and all of the things that he obviously would be doing in a different if he didn't have ME. But it was really neat hearing about all of his interests and all that he has done and all that he would like to do and his fascination with music and who was it who he was writing. He's trying to write a book about, the just it's like
Oh, I can't remember
trying to
now.
write
It
a
was
book
so
with
good. Yeah, it's
ME, but he was,
fascinating. Yeah.
yeah, if some, I think, composer philosopher person, but I could be
Mm.
making that up, but I
I
think
think,
that's
yeah.
that's it. Another two that come to mind just right off the bat are recent ones, and that's probably why they're coming to mind. But also brilliant was the one with your doctor,
Hmm.
Dr. Spate.
Hmm.
Uh, it was very hard, but it was, I think, that one, and then the one with Eliza Charlie, is that her name?
Yeah. Yeah.
Both of those touched on the topic of sort of psychologization and medical gas, the kind of
Mm.
the the kind of mind fucking that goes
Yeah.
on with an illness where people try to convince you that it's not a real illness, that stuff. And it's so both of those episodes are, I think, emotionally hard, but I think really important and really
Hmm.
interesting. And I think, like, I'd have to go back through. I mean, there's so
Yeah, I'm
many
just
more
looking
that
at.
I
I'm
loved.
not paying attention. I'm just having a look on literally on
Yeah,
YouTube, looking at the different episodes because it's yeah.
is anything what was so the first episode was us. What was your first interview, and what was your first interview? Do you remember doing your first
Think it was.
interview
I
and what
think
that
that
was
was.
like?
I think that might have been Vlad actually. I'm just looking now. Yeah, it was. It was Vlad. No, it wasn't. It was Anna. It was the Anna's
Oh, the bird
authorlogical journey.
photography.
That was
Oh, I
lovely. It
loved
was just
that.
yeah, and she made it so easy for me because it was the first one that I'd done as well, and it was just a lovely, and it wasn't too long. It was just kind of like a nice amount of time, and it was just sort of dipping our toe in the water a little bit. And Anna was on my list of people that I thought would be brilliant to talk to. Just because of her love of and her passion for
Yeah,
birds, and also, living on a farm, we see so many of them around here as well. So, it was great, yeah. And
yeah,
then I think it has been a sort of like a process, and I think I hope I've improved as well. I think I hope I've got better at thinking about uh, what to ask next and things like that. What like where
yeah,
to take the conversation, and like we do always have like some prompts. I have some like prompts that I send people or whatever, and some questions and stuff, and we kind of have a bit of a, I have a think about like how the flow of the kind of like the episode's going to go.
yeah.
But I really enjoyed the one with Eliza. Again, probably because it's most recently, but also because it felt like she just talked, and I think I said at the end of the podcast it felt a little bit like I forgot that I was like in a conversation, not because she dominated the conversation. It wasn't
Yeah,
that at all. It was just because I was so I was just like, this is, I could just, yeah, absorb this, like what she was saying.
yeah,
It was
yeah,
affirming. It was beautiful. It was heartbreaking, her sharing a story, but also the way that she framed it, and talking about meaning and worth, and the inherent value of human life. So that was great. It was so much fun talking to Jenny Jacks as well. That was and Jenny and Vlad, both got kind of fairly big followings in a
wait,
way.
can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Have we gone funny again? I can't now. I
Oh,
can now.
sorry. Oh, there we go. Now it's recording. It didn't
Yeah,
look
yeah,
like it
yeah.
was recording. So yeah, the Jenny Jacks.
Yeah, and obviously I'd it was funny because I'd watched Vikings and big massive series, History Channel series, on. I always felt like, and I hadn't seen Game of Thrones until recently, but I always thought that Vikings had a just didn't get the recognition that it deserved as a TV series, like back in,
Yeah.
so I yeah, it was a bit of a fanboy thing to talk to her and just
That's
learn
funny.
a bit about kind of filming and things like that, and obviously like her sharing that, it got a lot of views, and
Yeah.
uh but I've equally enjoyed, like, the grief series was just so special that
Yeah.
it what's really been amazing is that we wanted to look at sort of building community, and I hope to some extent we've done that. I think it's more about people being able to come along, watch and listen, and feel that they are heard and seen, really. And I think the grief series, the very sort of significant and unique nature of chronic illness grief was covered in a way that I don't know if there's anything else out there in that sense. Talking to Emily Bazalgette, who's got her Substack on grief sick. She said, she's done a lot of research and stuff, and there's just not a lot of on the issues of grief out there, and chronic illness particularly, and ME, and the way that it impacts us. And I didn't realize when we started that kind of how big it was going to be, big as in like how many people I was going to talk to, and how many people were going to be interested in actually talking about it, because and telling their stories, and that was amazing. That it was one of those things on Twitter that just sort of blew up, and lots and lots of people were kind of sharing, either sharing tweets, and I think also like people engaging in it in a way that they were able to engage with it. So some of our episodes were quite short, some of them were longer, some of them were written, some of them were audio. So it was a real combination, really, wasn't it? And I think we need to be like always bearing in mind like how we can keep ourselves as accessible as possible to the ME community. And like, I've got things wrong at times where I've put some music behind something or a video, and then somebody's messages and saying, oh, that don't put music behind stuff because it just makes me, or don't use gifs in your Twitter posts or whatever because it's just too much visual stimulation. I'm like, okay, yeah. So um, so we want them, and I completely ditched the music. So the earlier episodes have actually got a theme tune, and some of the early ones have got like a 30-second theme tune, and I sort of slapped it on there, and then Vlad's like, no, that's too long, and then so I made it like a 10-second. I made it like a 10-second uh, uh, introduction, and then I thought, why do we need music? So I just ditched it. So um, yeah, yeah. Um, hmm.
It's remember really enjoying the Emily Bazalgette episode.
Yeah, yeah. So she does the grief sick thing, and it just felt like a really nice way of ending the series, really. So and I'm going to be talking to her next month and featuring on her Substack, so that's lovely. And yeah, it was. I think again coming back to kind of like sort of spirituality, but in a way that's like unique as well in terms of like processing, thinking about how we process the loss that we've gone through. And she talked quite openly about her almost having an experience with psilocybin, and how that had kind of like opened up
Oh,
her kind
that's
of like
right.
awareness, and so
Yep.
then her whole project had sort of come off the back of this experience that she had, that she's like, well,
Yep.
we've got to delve more into the grief process for this. So yeah, it was that was lovely, and so yeah, it's been a really, and like there's so many other episodes. I love talking to Litsa Dramusis.
Yeah. I
She
was
was
thinking
just
about
fantastic,
that.
and she's going to be coming back next month. Hopefully, we've got a special
Right.
uh, Well, I could say what it is. We're going to be having an episode or a mini series again, and not as big and long as the grief one, but somebody contacted our email and said, could you do an episode about people that has experienced ME and cancer together? And
Yeah.
I was like, okay, yeah, let's look at this, and that's I knew that was something that Litz has gone through. Um,
Yeah.
Elitza. So yeah, I reached out to her. So yeah, she's coming back on. We're going to have potentially our first kind of like group discussion
Yeah.
episode. So there might be sort of 4 or 5 of us. Uh, so what that'll look like, I don't know, but keep an eye out for it. We've got some planning to do, and it's going to be later in the summer.
Yeah.
I've got an episode in the pipeline with 2 of my good friends that I kind of like. I was pen pals with both of them, actually. Yvette was my first pen pal, and we sort of met through an ME organisation, and Hazel also, and I thought it'd be great to talk about, like, for those of us who do have children, to talk about like the experience of parenting with ME. So that's something that we're going to do, and I'm really aware of a need to talk about childlessness and the impact of that, or the impact of ME
Yeah.
on that. I'm just not sure what that would look like and whether I'm the right person to facilitate that discussion, or yeah. So that it's something that I've got on my mind as well.
Great idea. And yeah, I mean, I think it goes along with a broader theme that we also want to be talking about, or I definitely would love to have group conversations about, which is various kinds of social repercussions of living with ME. And you talked about
mm,
what it's like, sort of being a kid and missing part of your. I think a lot about sort of social development and social, not just like developing sort of social skills and missing out on some of that, missing out on like sort of work life type stuff, and maybe it's I think there's also a way that for people who get ME when they're younger, it's harder to build. You don't really have a community to necessarily fall back on, because it can be very hard to build at least local community with ME. I think there's so many things, and then just like navigating
mm,
relationship stress when you have ME, and navigating conflict, or processing that needs to happen. So I think there are so many topics around relationships that I think would be really interesting to talk about, and I think people would hopefully enjoy it. And we'd love to hear from you, like if there are
yeah.
things that you would want us to kind of have conversations about, but just know that these are all just conversations, and we're not here to be experts on any of these subjects, but I think it's really helpful, to kind of hear other people with ME talk about their experiences. And I don't know if I knew that you wanted to talk about childlessness, but I think that hits home for me as somebody who really did. I wanted to have kids. I wasn't like 100%
Mm,
sure that I would be able to find. I think I wanted to have a certain amount of financial stability, and I was already, when I got ME, I was 43. But I
mm,
think having kids was definitely something that I thought was at least a possibility until I got ME, and then it was very clear to me that it's not a possibility.
mm,
So yeah, I
yeah.
would love to hear conversations about that. And
And I think there's that yeah, it's decisions that people have to make, isn't it? And some people, like my friends, they had kids while they had me, knowing that it was going to be tough, but that was their choice, and that's what they. My friend Hazel, who hopefully is going to come on, she and a partner adopted. So childlessness is part of her story as well. So yeah, I think it'll be an interesting one. I'm just aware of like the real need for sensitivity around it, because it's such
yeah,
a it is a sensitive issue, and I think people will come to it with their own background experiences and stuff like that. And I think it might be something that would be a really important resource, but I also know that
Yeah.
it could be really difficult for people. So I don't want to make that hard, but I think it is something that's a very real issue that people are wrestling with, and in our and it's going to be covered a little bit in a forthcoming episode. I'm also talking to Anique from Belgium, who's just released a book, and she came over to the UK because she's spent time living in the UK and in Belgium, and she talks in that. Interestingly, she spent an awful lot of time being treated, and her book's about medical gaslighting, so it's coming up soon. And she was
Yep.
treated for ME, but it actually turned out that it was Ehlers-Danlos syndrome and Lyme disease. And
Yeah.
so although the book's about ME in a sense, it's also about the her being wrongly diagnosed and treated for ME when actually there was other things going on. But for a very
Yeah.
long time that wasn't. It was, she wasn't aware. So yeah, she talks about that, about the difficult decision that she did have a child. So I'm only about halfway through the book, so I'm busy reading it at the minute. So it's it's gonna be an interesting conversation. So yeah, so we've got lots of themes. Um, Although we don't talk about treatments as such, one thing that I was thinking about would be talking about medical cannabis, because that could be
Yeah.
a really interesting conversation. And I've reached out to somebody who potentially would be willing to talk about that. So yeah, so there's a lot to think about.
Yeah. A lot in the works. So we've just finished our first season of this podcast. Amazingly, it's been a year, and please go check out the amazing, all the amazing interviews Dan has done, and yeah, and then we're about to start our second season, and we would love to hear from you. We always love any comments you can leave are really helpful. Any way you can help get the word out about the podcast. Any ideas you have, or if you're interested in being interviewed, we can't guarantee that it's going to be the right fit for the show, but we'd love hearing
Mm,
from you. Please let us know if you would like to be interviewed, and we'll get back to you, and let you know if it's a good fit. And the other thing, and then I'm starting to get crashed out, but we are also, and I'll leave a little um Dan, I'm not sure if you wanted to talk about this today. So we're
we
thinking
took
about starting a Patreon.
yeah.
And so if we do that, we're really hoping to get, as much community support and connection and interaction as possible. We'd really like to grow our community and become more, have more voices
Mm,
interacting on the in the chats, and
yeah.
yeah, so as we
So
yeah.
yeah, if you don't know what Patreon is, it's a site, it's a website, it's an app, it's a way of viewers and listeners being able to like engage with us, but also in a dedicated space. But it's also something where you can give us money if you want to, and we're not asking for we don't want loads of money. It doesn't really cost a great deal to run. To do what we do, other than our time, but there are costs in terms of like us our subscription for Riverside, which is the recording platform that gives us the ability to do things really easily and quickly in editing and things like that. So it makes things sometimes when we put a short out and there's a little the words that come up as well, the subtitles and stuff like that, all that stuff is done really easily within there. So it makes it easier than us just having a Zoom conversation, and then sort of, and
Yeah.
hopefully it improves the quality as well for the audio, we do have niggly technical issues, but it hopefully improves the quality of the video
Yeah.
and the audio as well for you. So so that, yeah, I mean, um, there is the cost of that, and that's coming up in June, and also just the website, running the website. Because
Yeah.
what we were like when Dov came back to me and told me that he'd got www.pempod.com, I was just like, wow, that's amazing, because it just generally didn't seem like it would be a domain that would be available. So yeah, just to be able to say our website is pempod.com, and people can find it
Yeah.
really easily, is brilliant. But there are costs with that for the actual website platform, and also the domain. So we've kind of got those kind of three outlays.
And then
And
there's equipment, and which, we sometimes have to replace, like our, computers and all that, and mics and cameras. So there's also that. And then Dan, do you want to talk a little about Dan would really
I
like to, yeah,
no, I've just got like a bit of a pipe dream. In the long term, well, I would love us to be in a position where we could give grants to creative people living with ME and chronic illness who are working creatively in some way, and they need
yeah,
some money for some equipment. Like, most of us don't work; we're all kind of like scrapping around, trying to survive on benefits and things like that. And an artist who needs some paint, can we give them, send them
yeah,
like 50 quid for some quality paint? Or I don't know how much paint is, maybe it's more than that, but whatever. um
yeah,
Somebody that needs something, like, that we could just respond to and say, okay, here's some money, and we can support people that way. That would just like that would just fill me with just like I would just fill me with joy, really. So yeah, those are the sort of things. So in the short term, if you want to help out with anything in terms of like help towards the side of the website, anything like that, just if it's like 20 quid, 5 quid, whatever, dollars, that would be lovely. But I don't want anybody to ever sort of feel like obliged. We don't want to really monetize the sort of channels. We want to keep, I'd rather like keep adverts off it if possible. I know people do put adverts on podcasts and stuff like that. Apart from what pops up on your YouTube, there's nothing on the audios. So yeah, we'd rather keep it like that. But if so yeah, if you would like to help us out. There's so many people asking for money, so at the minute, and we're aware of that, and people need support. So there's no expectations whatsoever. But just if you want to help, cover some costs. Otherwise, we'll keep covering them ourselves in some way. I don't know.
yeah,
But yeah. That's that. So yeah, just email us if you want. In the short term, email us if you want to help out, and it could be a PayPal thing. Otherwise, we're going to be looking at setting up Patreon in the coming weeks, and you can then like sign into. You can have the app on your phone or wherever you can sign in. We might post updates, but we certainly, we're not going to be sort of committing to kind of giving extra content, because we just don't have capacity. So it would just be a
yeah,
case of like, if you want to support us and be involved in a space that you can chat about the episodes or whatever like that, it would just be yeah, it'd be good. So that's it, really.
yeah. Um, there's more I'd like to say, but I'm kind of crashing out.
Yeah,
So, do you want to wrap up? I we'd love to hear, if you want to leave in the comments, like, some, if there's any particular podcasts from the last year that have really been meaningful to you, feel free to share that. We'd love that. And yeah, and just get in touch and let us know your thoughts. And we hope you're managing as well as can be. It's such an honor to get to do this, and such a
yeah.
delight.
Thanks for listening.
And hmm,
Thanks for watching. Thanks to for
yeah,
people for listening and watching, because like we we didn't know if people would be interested, or would want to. So it's been a good journey. I think that's it. Okay, we'll see you
okay,
next time.
ciao.
Bye.